Hello and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley. Thanks for being here tonight. Tonight I've got a shorter video. We're going to be talking about Joe Biden's pick for Kamala Harris to be the selection for vice president if he wins in November. Now, here's the thing about this. There are a lot of people that are triggered. The Bernie Bros are triggered, of course. They were basically going to be triggered by anybody, which is, great. I mean, you love to see it, right? But Kamala Harris, as a candidate, in terms of an overall pick, in terms of, a Democratic pick for vice president, decent choice. Decent choice. There's some nuance here. The first note of nuance, of course, is that she famously implied that he was racist, right? Back in the debates way early on in the campaign in the primaries. And so if I'm Joe Biden, yeah, like yeah, you're on a list. You're not gonna be anywhere near vice president if I'm Joe Biden. But Joe Biden forgives easier than I do, I guess. And he thought, I mean, she's senator from California. I mean, obviously she's qualified to be vice president. She's got, a career as a prosecutor and everything. Here's the other thing about that though, which is that yes, she's woke. Yes, she's, pretty progressive and everything, and that can be kind of cringy and whatnot, right? But he could have done a lot worse. I mean, it's kind of a meme. A lot of people were like, yeah, there's no way it's going to happen. But I mean, there was a chance that he was going to pick Elizabeth Warren. Let's just be real about it. There was a chance he was going to pick Elizabeth Warren. So if you ask me, well, who would you prefer? Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren? It's like, it's not even close. You basically have like female Bernie versus Kamala Harris. It's like, of course you're going to go with Kamala Harris. Now, here's the thing though. Like I said, for me, I would not have picked her if I was in Biden's case, simply over that personal drama, right? But politically speaking, I mean, if you can separate that it looks weak, that it makes him look like, he's okay with people disrespecting him, that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe you look for that as a quality if you're kind of done with Trump making everything self-centered and whatnot, and where he's disparaging and being incredibly disrespectful towards, the late Senator John McCain, the war hero, for example. May you say, well, I don't really mind that Joe Biden doesn't have as big of an ego, or that, he forgives easier or anything. Maybe, it's time for a bit of a change there. Okay. I could see the optics of that and everything. But for me personally, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to pick somebody else if I'm Joe Biden. And there were other people floated around, of course. There's Governor Whitmer from Michigan. And, of course, Susan Rice he's also considering. But, he went with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, like I said, decent pick. Could have been a lot worse, too. Because he could have gone way more woke, could have gone way more progressive. So he's sticking with somebody who's, moderately progressive. I guess he sees that as, it should help him in some respect, because he's a bit more, even though he's a very progressive candidate and he's the most progressive that the Democrats have nominated in history, it is the case that he's a bit of a blue dog. He's a bit of a blue dog Democrat, and Kamala Harris is definitely more progressive than Joe Biden. So from that standpoint, if he wants to win over progressive voters, I understand the reasoning. I get the strategy there. I also understand that, Kamala Harris, very, charismatic person. She's somebody who, she, of course, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember when they had that back and forth with Tulsi Gabbard, but I mean, she shut down Tanky Tulsi. Reese and I were talking about that way back. We're like, we don't really pay much attention to Kamala Harris, kind of neutral, don't really have, too much opinion or anything. Obviously, we were both supporting Biden back then, but we're like, hey, look, regardless of what you think of Kamala Harris and the whole K-Hive and everything over on Twitter, Well, you got to give her a big up right now because she shut down Tanky Tulsi, and that was great. And, here's another advantage to him picking Kamala Harris, which is that Kremlin Kyle, our friend, the Russian cow, was out there on Twitter absolutely whining, losing it over a speech that Harris had given at APAC, where she was defending the United States alliance with Israel, like one of America's prime allies, most loyal allies, one of America's most shared values allies, the only democracy in the Middle East, the only liberal democracy in the Middle East, the only place that's secular essentially in the Middle East. And don't give me that whole Assad secular, he protects Christians, bro. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Anyway, Israel's a secular country. You can be Muslim in Israel. You can be Christian in Israel. You can be atheist in Israel. Obviously, you can be Jewish in Israel. It's a liberal democracy. It's a secular democracy. It's being ganged up on and invaded by Arab dictatorships several times in the last, since its inception in the 1940s. Like, why, what? Are we supposed to be allies? Is the West supposed to be allies with what? Hamas? The Palestinian Authority? The people who literally, even if you don't say Hamas, just outright evil terrorists, right? Let's just say, oh, well, what about the Palestinian Authority, bro? Yeah, they pay the families of those who blow themselves up, suicide bombers in Israel, to kill Israelis. They pay the families because they're heroic martyrs. So, yeah, they're terrorists. What? We're supposed to be allies? The West is supposed to be allies? America's supposed to be allies with literal terrorists? It's like, it's like Ilhan Omar taking the side of Iran over Israel. And what do I mean by that? Well, she supports the boycott, divest, sanction movement against Israel. But when asked about, well, what about sanctions on Iran, she said that would constitute economic warfare against Iran. But she supports, by her own choice of words, economic warfare against Israel, a U.S. ally. So it begs the question, of course, whose side is Omar on? But we're getting off track a little bit here. Getting back to the substance of tonight's topic, of course, Joe Biden picking Kamala Harris. I think that, as Nally's pointing out in the chat, could have been better, but definitely could have been worse. And let's talk about that. I think it could have been a lot better. I think, I was talking about how Joe Biden, in terms of him trying to appeal more to progressive voters, to kind of offset this at least this perceived image of him as more of a blue dog, a more conservative Democrat, even though he is still a pretty progressive guy, and he's the most progressive candidate that they've ever nominated for president in the Democratic Party. But, that's basically what he's trying to do. He's trying to shore up his base here. I think that that's the wrong strategy. Again, I think that Harris is a decent pick. And what I'm about to lay out here is something that Joe Biden was never going to do. He probably could never do it. It would probably be seen as a non-starter with all of his aides and a lot of the Democratic donors. I get that. But here's what I would have done if I'm Joe Biden. So hear me out here. And it's not to say that it's too late for him, because vice president isn't the only pick. He's got a whole cabinet that he could pick. Here's what I would do if I was Joe Biden. All right. Obviously, we're not picking Harris. She did imply that, he's a racist and everything. So even if you say, well, it's in the past, it's like, but you're not getting the VP pick. Maybe something else, but you're not getting VP if you're talking about that, like, on the debate stage against me. It's one thing to say, I dislike your policies here. You're weak on this. You're too focused on one thing when you should be paying attention to another thing. It's another to just basically outright imply somebody's racist, right? Especially when Harris also was in support of a lot of the same policies that Joe Biden was in favor of. So that's a douchey move. She's not getting the pick if it's me. But to kind of go back to the suggestion for what I would have done. I mean, y'all know I was saying this on Twitter earlier. It's like if it was me, y'all know who I'm picking for vice president. It's gonna be Dick Cheney. It's gonna be Mitt Romney. Now, okay, Dick Cheney's kind of a meme. Probably not Dick Cheney. I mean, if I knew I was gonna win, it'd be Dick Cheney. But like, yeah, you could probably do better going with somebody who's a bit more moderate, like Mitt Romney. But the point is, you are trying to win over independents. You're not, this is not like, you don't win the election by trying to get Bernie bros to show up to vote for you. That's not how this works. You have to win over independents. So, where are independents in America? Are they to the left of the Democrats or to the right of the Democrats? Well, duh, they're to the right of the Democrats. They're somewhere between a Republican and a Democrat on average, right? Oh, and you can say, oh, well, Bernie's an independent and like he's a socialist, bro. It's like, yeah, that's like one person, one senator. It's like, I don't care. I'm just talking about averages here. You don't focus your entire election campaign on trying to appeal to one person, right? So you gotta be real. You gotta move to the right in the general election. Sure, you can give like some lefty talking points and stuff in the primaries and try to brand yourself as more progressive than you really are in the Democratic primary. We get that. We've all talked about that. Reese and I have talked about this, obviously, in the past on air. Joe Biden is the kind of guy, similar to Hillary Clinton, who has a public and a private opinion. And it's pretty easy to gauge what their private opinions are because, you know, you can look at the times when they were in power, especially earlier on and everything, and you can look at comparing that with the primaries. What they say in the primaries is going to be more hyperbolic. It's going to be more politically charged to appeal to the most radical contingents in their party, right? Because primaries are usually where the more radical people go. I mean, just look at the Republican primaries. It's a vicious thing to see who can be the most right wing, that kind of stuff, right? Likewise on the Democratic Party. But we all understood he was no Bernie Sanders, that no matter what Joe Biden says, he at the end of the day, he knows he's got to say some pretty unreasonable stuff, but he's also a reasonable guy. And it's important that he defeats Bernie. He did defeat Bernie. So after defeating Bernie, what I would have done is I would have moved rightward. Now, not in terms of policy. I wouldn't say lie about what your policy is per se going into the general election. You can do that in the primary. Everybody does that in the primary. I would just be more or less genuine about what my actual policies are. Joe Biden's somebody who's, you know, slightly left of center, but still conservative in the Democratic Party, right? So just be honest about that. But here's what you do. You don't change your opinions. You don't lie or anything in order to shift rightward into the general. You pick people that will have that crossover appeal. So, for example, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, Republican, obviously not liked by Donald Trump. He would make a good pick for vice president. Now, you could say, well, that's kind of extreme, picking somebody from the other party to be your VP. Okay. Well, then what about Secretary of State? Like I said, so Joe Biden's already picked Kamala Harris to be vice president. That's his pick, right, for the position. If he wins in November, she's going to be the vice president. Okay, but he should announce the State Department position before the election, before the transition period. He should just be, straight up, maybe at the convention, say, here's the deal. I understand that a lot of people that are on the fence, a lot of independents out there, and a lot of Republicans who might vote for a Democrat, but, they really do not want to be pushed in a corner to vote for Donald Trump because they've seen what he's done to their party, how he's made it a circus, essentially. What Joe Biden could do to appeal to the Lincoln Project Republicans and the neoconservatives is pick somebody like Mitt Romney or John Bolton or somebody like that for the State Department and say, yes, I'm Joe Biden. I'm a Democrat. My vice president, Kamala Harris, she's a progressive Democrat. Sure, I understand why you might have some hesitations there. But, we're going to get things done if we win. And I want Republicans to understand, we're not like some super communists or whatever. We're open to working with Republicans. I would say, I'm like, okay, Secretary of State is going to be a Republican. Similar to how Joe Biden said months ago that when he was deciding on whom he was going to pick to be the VP, he said, straight up, he's like, it's going to be a woman. My vice president is going to be a woman. So he didn't say who it was going to be, but he basically laid out the criteria on there. Well, you could lay out a similar criterion and say, well, likewise at the convention, you say, look, I'm not some radical left kind of guy. I'm a Democrat. I believe in progress and everything and all this kind of stuff. But I'm also open to working with Republicans. And as essentially an offering of commitment, of proof that you are able to compromise and get things done, and that you do get along with people on the other side, and that you won't be divisive, and that you are a uniter. You say, we're picking Mitt Romney or we're picking some other prominent Republican to be Secretary of State. That'd be based. That'd absolutely be based. Because now, okay, you say you're shored up your base with picking, somebody who's to the left of you with Kamala Harris. Okay, that's cool. But now you're actually really reaching independents that might have voted for Donald Trump. But now that they see, oh, okay, he's got a Republican on his side too in a very prominent cabinet position. He's already said no matter what, it's going to be a Republican, or say it's Mitt Romney for sure, that kind of thing. But again, he doesn't even have to specify a particular individual at the convention. All he has to say is like, it's going to be somebody from the Republican Party. But the thing is, he actually would win over some Republicans. Like, there's a chance if he does that with Mitt Romney specifically, there's a chance that he might carry Utah. And you say, Utah's a small state and everything. Yeah, I get that. But, I mean, these elections come down to fine percentages. If you can sway over 1% of Republicans, like let's say that you sway over a lot of like the neoconservative side, obviously the Lincoln Project, those guys, they're already going to vote for Joe Biden. But like, let's say that you're able to appeal to not never Trumpers, but people that voted for Trump in 2016, registered Republicans, but that are actually serious about foreign policy and stuff. But they're voting for Donald Trump because they're worried about what what Joe Biden would be like with respect to Iran. And they're worried that he might be a continuation of Obama in foreign policy. Well, now, by picking somebody who's, a very hawkish kind of guy for Secretary of State, you basically, you're going to get 1, 2, 3%, maybe even more. Maybe 3% of the Republicans to vote for you. Donald Trump can brag all he wants about it. He's got 90+% support in the Republican Party. Okay, he's not going to win any Democrats. He's not going to get any Democrats, But then Joe Biden gets 3% of Republicans? Yeah, it's a small number. Yeah, guess what? Then he's the president. Like, one vote can determine who's the president. Presidential elections often come down to, on the popularity vote side of it, 1 to 3%. That's what makes the difference. And then, of course, we saw in 2016, famously, that in 3 states, it was a total of 70,000 votes or so that made the difference between Clinton versus Trump. So if he wins over even 1% of Republicans more than he would have by not picking a Republican, well, then it makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people are saying that it's basically in the bag, that of course Joe Biden's going to win. Look at how Trump's handled COVID. Look at how Trump tweets and everything. Yeah, I wouldn't underestimate Trump. I still think Trump has a decent chance at this. I still feel, it's like Trump has 1/3, Biden's got 2/3. That's just how I feel about it. And Donald Trump could very easily win re-election. Joe Biden and Harris, they need to take this seriously. They need to, to wage a good campaign and give it their all, because you can't just get comfortable or cozy or just assume you're going to win. That's not a winning strategy. And so I also think it would be a very good way to reach out and to say, you're not this meme, this characterization, this caricature that the far right will paint you as, that Trump's campaign will paint you as, that you're somebody who for decades has been able to make deals and get things done. And you can highlight that in contrast to Trump, who always talks about he makes deals, but his deals aren't really that good. Look at North Korea, for example. Well, it'd be a really good point of evidence there if you could say, "Hey, look, I mean, just going into this, we haven't even stepped into the White House yet, and we're already working across the aisle, and we already got Republicans that are going to be in our cabinet." That would be such a winning ticket. That would so change those odds. It would be almost impossible for Trump to overcome that. And you can say, but what about the Bernie Bros? Maybe they vote for Trump. Yeah, the Bernie Bros. What, I'm going to be worried about the Bernie Bros? The Bernie Bros couldn't even get Bernie elected in the primary. Like, they don't even show up. They're vocal on Twitter, sure. They're vocal on Twitch. They'll call people chuds and all kinds of choice words, right? But they don't show up to vote. So who cares about them? Who cares? And for every Bernie bro that's going to go and actually show up and vote for Donald Trump, if Joe Biden pursues this, you're going to have like 1.2 or 1.5 Republicans that show up and vote for Joe Biden. And sure, it might only be like what? 5% of Republicans vote for Biden. And then, 3% of Democrats vote for Trump. It might be higher, it might be lower, whatever. The point is, it doesn't matter because he's still going to become president. Joe Biden is. Oh man, so the Bernie Bros. Oh, and that's another thing that I would love if he picked like somebody like Mitt Romney too. He's not going to pick Dick Cheney. Like I said, I would pick Dick Cheney, but hey, I wouldn't be in the Democratic Party. So like if I was running, I'd be running as a Republican. But this is Joe Biden. I think Mitt Romney still a good pick. Still a good pick for Secretary of State. He's not going to do John Bolton. He won't do John Bolton, but Mitt Romney would be pretty good. I mean, that's about all that I have to say on that. But I mean, we know that our friend, the Russian cow, who doesn't know what farms look like, Kremlin Kyle Kulinski, their cow. We know that he would not like that pick. He would say, "Oh, it's just the neocon ghouls. It's the military-industrial complex, bro. It's the end of the world. Look at this. Look at this establishment show." As he literally proceeds to lick the boots of the Russian establishment ad nauseum. So take a look at the chat, and then we'll wrap this up. Like I said, it's going to be a shorter stream tonight, my friends. So. Ariel Suarez says Democrats are able to compromise. Republicans aren't. Just look at the House and Senate. Republicans unanimously vote against any bills Dems bring to the table. Well, yeah, I could see that. That's true. Republicans are definitely more fighters. Even isolationist Republicans that I despise have more of a backbone than a lot of Democrats. That's because the Democratic Party, like I'm gonna keep it 100 with you all right now. I agree with the Democrats on some stuff. I agree with the Republicans on some stuff. The Democrats are not the party of strength. Let's just keep that real. So they have a disadvantage going into it. The Democrats, their selling point is compromise. Their selling point is their optics. Their selling point is that they're seen as less stubborn. With Republicans, it's a feature. It's seen as optically, they're seen as strong and forceful and everything. Whereas in the Democratic Party, if you adopt that kind of position, you're not going to be seen as woke. You're not going to be seen as a compromising enough figure. So different parties have different metrics that they need to appeal to. And Republicans care about strength a lot more than Democrats. So that's my take on that there. Yeah, their excuse is the system is rigged, man. Yeah, rigged against lazy people. Yeah, well, if the Bernie Bros actually showed up to vote, maybe they could have gotten Bernie to win in the primary. They don't really show up. California, super progressive state, right? Guess what percent of the vote? I'll give you guys just a quick game here. Guess what percent of the vote Bernie got in the California primary this year? Guess what he got? Guess what he got? Was it 45%? Was it 55%? I mean, it's a progressive state, right? Do you get 60% of the vote? 45%? 48% of the vote? No, bro. You know what he actually got? He got less than 33%. He got less than a third of the vote in progressive California. It's like Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, Mr. 6%, spends $1 million. Spends $1 million, over $1 million, and he gets 6% of the vote. For reference, the runner-up after him spent about $500. Progressive California. The Bernie Bros are proof that Twitter isn't real life. If Twitter was real life, half of the Republican candidates would literally be Nazis. They'd be like Nick Fuentes groypers. And half of the Democratic candidates would literally be like Karl Marx worshiping communists, right? But that's not real life. People that actually vote, a lot of them have never even downloaded Twitter. So the Bernie Bros, they're not worth considering. The only point when it's even worth thinking about them is to dunk on them and laugh as they get triggered. They get absolutely triggered. They get like the meme that I'm about to bring up right now. They're the triggered Zoomer right here. This is what they look like right now. This is them today. That's all that they were today. They were just fuming and dooming. Bunch of doomers, zoomers, right? Whereas Joe Biden, despite all the tragedy that he's had in his life, despite all the challenges and all the haters, he's still a bloomy guy. He's still very optimistic. And I think, I think that Joe Biden, like I said, he could have made a much worse choice. If he picked Elizabeth Warren, like let's say that he picked Elizabeth Warren, you're basically at that point handing the election to Donald Trump. Like I get like technically he still has a chance at winning and everything, but for all intents and purposes, you know that Trump and Pence are going to win in 2020. So the vice presidential pick, people will say, oh, it doesn't really matter very much. Kamala Harris isn't going to make that much of a difference for Joe Biden. Kind of a neutral pick. Doesn't really help him too much. Maybe shores up a bit more of his progressive base than would have otherwise turned out to vote. Sure, okay. Doesn't really hurt him. But imagine he picked Elizabeth Warren. I call her aggressive McWoke because that's what she is. You guys see that video where she's trying to look average and working class or whatever, and she's drinking a beer in the most awkward way possible because, of course, she's like this upper middle class, outright wealthy, Harvard, ivory tower, champagne socialist, right? Absolute cringe. Absolute cringe. Out of touch, super woke, right? Oh, can you imagine? I mean, it would have been Pocahontas ads nonstop from Trump, nonstop tweets and everything. It would have been over. Joe Biden would have lost that day. It would have been a done election. Done and dusted. Trump 2020. That's what would have happened. But he picked Kamala Harris. Doesn't really make too much of a difference. People will say, oh, well, see, the vice presidential pick, not that big of a deal. No, it is a big deal. He could have absolutely screwed it up. He kind of kept it a little bit neutral, slightly positive in his direction-ish. Because what are the Republicans going to do? Like, what are they going to do? I saw some people saying on Twitter, and I tweeted this out too. I'm like, imagine the Republicans start attacking Kamala Harris now for a record as a prosecutor. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about right now before we wrap this up. People will say, hey, man, Kamala Harris, she's a cop. Cop Kamala Harris. oh man, did you know she was a prosecutor? And I look at that and I'm like, wait, she was a cop? She was a prosecutor? That sounds based. Like, that's a selling point. Imagine accusing somebody of being one of the most honorable professions out there as a way to diminish them. No, Kamala Harris. What'd she do? What'd she do? Oh, she put black people, she prosecuted black people, is their claim, because they committed crimes. Oh, in other words, she did her job. She also went after white people who committed crimes. Like, what? Like, it would be a fiasco. It would be a political scandal if, as prosecutor, she like let everybody off the hook and like refused to prosecute people because like of their skin color or something. No, she did her job. This is the same as being outraged that like Joe Biden picked a firefighter, a former firefighter, to be his vice president. And then we find out about the firefighter. We find out the juicy details, the scandal that this firefighter, helped put out fires on like 9/11 and stuff. And you're like, wait, how is that? Wait, how's that bad? So like the guy did his job. The guy was honorable. Like what? What? You got cop Mala Harris is what they're calling her. That makes her sound badass. Like that's not the insult that you think it is. Calling somebody a cop. Oh, she enforces the law. It's like, yeah, would you rather have a vice president who flouts the law, who says, the law, who cares about the law, bro? It's just a social construct, bro. Who cares about the law? Let's be woke. Let's like burn everything down and burn down the AutoZone and everything. No, because Kamala Harris actually understands how like civilization operates and that you need to have laws and stuff. Yeah, but she put criminals in prison for being criminals and committing crimes, bro. It's like, yeah, she did her job, bro. I can't believe, man. Dude, they're so goofy. The Rose Twitter, even some of the woke sock Twitter, all these guys, they're out there. They're like, oh, she was horrible as a prosecutor. It's like, by horrible, you mean she did her job. Because if I think of a horrible prosecutor, I'm thinking like somebody who, they dropped the ball. They either refuse to prosecute cases that should be prosecuted in the public interest, or, they're just incompetent. They can't get any convictions through. No, she got a lot of convictions. She got a lot of convictions. She was a good prosecutor. And you know what? She'll probably be a pretty decent vice president. Just a prediction here. Pretty decent vice president. Pretty decent pick overall. He could have done a lot worse. Not saying that Joe Biden's going to win or anything. I think, Trump still got a chance here. Still got, somewhat decent chance. But Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, not a bad ticket. Not a bad ticket. And of course, compared to Donald Trump, it's like, yeah, you basically have to support, in my view at least, you got to support Biden just on foreign policy, because Biden will actually, even if he's not going to be 100% tough on Russia, at least he's not going to owe them money. My worry with Biden is more about Iran. My worry with Biden is more about China. Donald Trump, at least in rhetoric, has been tougher on China. And in actual policies, he's been a hell of a lot stronger than Joe Biden was under the Obama administration. But Joe Biden back in the 90s was a hell of a lot more stronger than Donald Trump. Joe Biden actually wanted to outright bomb Iran, whereas Donald Trump refused to and said, oh, they shot down a drone. But it was just a drone, bro. It's like, yeah, it was $130 million of American Air Force hardware shot down. Kind of an act of war. What are you going to do about it? Oh, well, we're bad, bro. I mean, yeah, Donald Trump's probably still going to be stronger on Iran, which is unfortunate because you need to get really tough on them before they get nukes. But just, I think Joe Biden isn't going to have a choice but to be tougher on Putin after everything that's happened. The Democratic Party, by and large, will go back to being weak on Russia for sure. But Joe Biden's he's quite a bit old school in a lot of ways, and he understands that the KGB are a bunch of thugs and that they are an enemy of all freedom-loving people. So thank you for being here tonight, everybody. Gonna wrap this up now. But be sure to like the video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so yet. Follow me over on Twitch. We're up to 37 followers now, so getting closer to 50, so you can get affiliate status. So that would be dope. And if you want to support my work here financially, you can go over to patreon.com/superpowerbroadcasting. Help me out over there. Once we hit $100 a month, I'll be releasing daily pre-recorded videos plus these daily streams. So we're at $64 right now. So $36 more to go there. And you want to send me a tip? PayPal is also in the description below. So thanks for being here, everybody. Have a good night.